You know, when we think about the American West, the picture in our heads is usually cowboys and covered wagons, right? It's a story that feels very familiar, but there's a huge piece of it that often gets left out. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible and often forgotten story of the African Americans who, right after the Civil War, looked to the Great Plains to find real freedom, not just in law, but in land.
So let's start right here. Just listen to these words from a black leader named Robert H. Knox back in 1872. This perfectly captures the feeling of that moment. I mean, the chains of slavery were technically gone, but that promise of freedom, it felt completely empty. Knox himself had actually told people to stay in the South before this, but he'd seen enough. This wasn't just a casual suggestion. It was a desperate, urgent plea for a real future.
So what was going so wrong down there? Well, on paper, you had these monumental promises in the Constitution, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. They were supposed to guarantee freedom, citizenship, the right to vote, the whole shebang. But the reality on the ground? It was an absolute nightmare. With the rise of Jim Crow laws, the constant terror from groups like the Ku Klux Klan, and a system designed to keep black families from owning land, the South was becoming, as one source put it, a dangerous, oppressive, and vicious place for ex-slaves.
In this dire situation, well, it lit a fire. It sparked a massive movement. It was a true exodus, a journey away from the broken promises of the South, all in search of a new, uncertain hope out west.
It's a really important question to ask, right? I mean, why would you pack up the very little you have and head out into this huge, harsh, totally unfamiliar landscape? It was a monumental risk, for sure, but the potential reward was everything they had ever been denied.
So what was pulling them west? The biggest thing, first and foremost, was the Homestead Act of 1862. This was a total game changer. It offered up affordable land to pretty much anyone willing to go out there and work it. And this wasn't just about farming. It was about economic independence, the chance to, and I'm quoting here, enjoy the earnings of your daily toil. And maybe most importantly, it was a chance to build safe communities, places where they could finally be in control of their own lives. The people who made this incredible journey became known as exodusters. Now, this name is so interesting because it's packed with meaning. It's a direct reference to the biblical story of Exodus, right? The Israelites escaping slavery in Egypt to find their own promised land. For these folks, Kansas wasn't just another state on a map. It was their Canaan. It was that profound. And you can see here, they put down roots all across the Great Plains. They established at least 6 major homesteading colonies. We're talking about Nicodemus in Kansas, DeWitt in Nebraska, Deerfield in Colorado, and others that stretched all the way into Wyoming and South Dakota. This wasn't just a few families scattered about. It was a deliberate network of brand new beginnings. But you know, just getting to the so-called Promised Land was one thing. Actually forging a life there, well, that was a whole other challenge. And if you look at the timeline here, you can see this wasn't just a single event like a flash in the pan. Nicodemus gets started in 1877, sure, but new settlements kept popping up for decades, all the way into the early 1900s. This shows you that this was a sustained, multi-generational push to build a completely new future out on the plains. So how did they do it? How did these communities actually come to be? It was a whole process of turning a legal claim on a piece of paper into a real, living, breathing place. It all started with a document just like this one. This is the final proof for James M. Thomas's homestead claim out in Colorado. This piece of paper, it represented that first, absolutely crucial step, legal ownership of land, a right that had been so violently denied to them back in the South. And when all those individual land claims came together, they created something so much bigger. Take a look at this. It's an aerial shot of Nicodemus, Kansas. You can see the grid of streets, the houses, the public buildings. This is what it looks like to build a community from scratch out on the prairie. It's the physical result of thousands of individual acts of incredible courage.
And listen, these weren't just collections of farms. They were vibrant, thriving towns. Right away, they established churches, which were the bedrock of their social life. They founded schools. In fact, get this, Nicodemus had the very first public school in its entire county. They opened businesses, everything from general stores to hotels, and even formed cultural groups like Jubilee singers and baseball teams. They were building a full life.
So here's the most important point, the thing that changes everything. In these towns, for the first time since emancipation, black people were in charge. They were the mayors, they were on the school board,
They were the business owners. They were, in their own words, the town elders and controllers of daily life. This was a profound, a truly revolutionary shift in autonomy and power.
But the story doesn't just end there. We have to look at the long-term legacy of these communities, and honestly, it might not be what you expect.
Okay, so here's the difficult truth. Of the 6 major communities that we've been looking at, 5 of them eventually disappeared. They got hit by everything: drought, falling crop prices, the Great Depression. So that leads to a really big question. Does that mean the whole experiment was a failure?
And the reality was just stark. DeWitt in Nebraska, gone by 1936. Deerfield, Colorado, vanished after the 1920s. As the years wore on, pretty much all of them just faded away. Only Nicodemus, Kansas, manages to survive today, and it's a National Historic Site. It's a really tough outcome to look at.
But what if we've been measuring success all wrong? The researchers who studied these communities, they came up with a totally different idea. They said success wasn't about creating these farms that would last for 5 generations. It was about creating a safe refuge, a staging area, to prepare the next generation for a different kind of success. This quote from that University of Nebraska study just nails the point. It says the homesteads served 2 key purposes. They were a safe harbor for the generation that escaped the South, and they were a launch pad for their children and grandchildren to go on and succeed in a much wider world.
And the proof is right there, in the legacy. Those homesteads, built with so much hope and sweat out on the plains, they produced something far more valuable than any crop. The descendants of these pioneers went on to become pharmacists, educators, authors, and nurses. One became an NFL player, another became a leading cancer researcher at a world-famous hospital. The safety, the stability, and the education that these tiny, remote communities provided, it made all of these incredible achievements possible.
And that brings us right back to Nicodemus. As the lone survivor, it stands as this physical monument to the whole story. It's not just some ghost town, it's a testament to a dream that didn't die. It evolved. It provided the foundation for a kind of success that echoed for generations to come.
And so we end with this thought. How do we actually measure the legacy of a dream? Is it in the number of acres that get passed down, or is it in the opportunities that get passed on? The story of the Exodusters really challenges us to see history not just as a scoreboard of wins and losses, but as this incredible chain of sacrifices and successes, with each one building on the one that came before.